In this episode of The Heart of Teaching Music, Jessie Montgomery.
Knowing the particular struggles of each art form is really important, and people need to understand that teaching is itself an art form. You're teaching the art of communication, again, through whatever means you have in front of you. I used to put the word yes all over my music at different points. I would just put yes or soften, words that kind of encourage relaxation and presence.
Hi, I'm Julia Baumanis.
And I'm Scott Edgar. Welcome to the Heart of Teaching Music.
Because without people, there is no music. This space is dedicated to the stories behind the sound.
Stories of identity, belonging, and the courage to make a difference through music.
Join us as we welcome leaders in music and music education who share their journeys, their challenges,
and what it truly means to teach, connect, and lead in our profession. Together, we'll explore why music matters and discover the true power of music for all.
And welcome back, friends. For this episode, we are very, very excited to have just a wonderful artist, composer, Grammy Award-winning, has done wonderful, beautiful work with the Sphinx organization, and was named Performance Today's 2025 Classical Woman of the Year. This is Jessie Montgomery, and we're excited to get started with her. We'd like to take a moment to just thank our episode sponsor, GIA, for sponsoring this episode of The Heart of Teaching Music. Welcome, Jessie. How you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. Hi, Julia. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to get it out of the way real quick and just fangirl for a little bit. I have been consuming your music and working on some of your music with my professional orchestra. And the words that they always use to describe your music is they talk about the color palette and just the beautiful range of what you do in your music. So I wanted to say thank you from us and our musicians. It's always a joy to work on your beautiful art. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. We start every single one of our episodes here with a specific question, and it's kind of centers around the goal behind this podcast, which is, what is the heart of teaching music to you?
Yeah. Well, that's a beautiful question. And certainly it keeps evolving over time for me, different stages of my career and application of my teaching in different scenarios. But the heart of teaching is empowering another person to connect with their own ideas about the world in a way, to help them find, I'm teaching music, so I'm teaching communication, I'm teaching listening, I'm teaching being open to others' musical ideas or opinions or contributions. So you're forming your opinions and your sort of attitudes around music and around communication.
Yeah.
And that translates hopefully into how the individual then shares music with others.
Yeah. So it could be, almost a springboard. You're using this art to non-verbally communicate a message, and their learning process about that expands their understanding of what artistic communication is. I love that. That's really beautiful. And if you could share with us how you got started in music. Primarily, the people that are going to be listening to this podcast are music educators, mainly in the band realm, but some composers. And later on, we'll have a student composer question for you that was submitted, which is really cool. But perhaps if you could frame a little bit about your background and how you got started in music.
Sure. I started in music on the violin. I was a very traditional Suzuki student at first. And I went to a community music school in New York City called Third Street Music School Settlement, which have wonderful programming these days. But those days it was a very unique moment. We had Kurt Mazur coming to conduct our orchestra, and we had Arnold Steinhardt come and do a masterclass, and Glenn Dictorow came and did a masterclass. We had all of these wonderful, really elevated artistic experiences with these incredible artists. So having that exposure at a young age, I think, was pretty special, but very special to New York, living and growing up in New York City at that time. So, again, as we get through our conversation, maybe this question comes up, I don't know, but about place and sort of where you are in your life, what opportunities you're exposed to as a young person make a huge difference in your outcome, I believe. And that can, takes many paths. But in any case, I was very lucky to be at Third Street when I was. I had great teachers, and I went on to study through high school and made the decision around junior high or so that I was going to go to college for music, and began my practicing journey, so to speak, and practiced a billion hours a day, and went to Juilliard for my undergrad for violin performance. And all the while I began composing as well in high school, around high school, junior high, high school. And so then that track they ran parallel to one another for a very long time, my performance and my writing. But it all started at Third Street Music School, daily, weekly Saturday program.
Jessie, our paths crossed formally once, and then it just seems like this name, Jessie Montgomery, keeps on coming up as you interact in many different ways in our field. So as I mentioned before we went live today, the Catalyst Quartet came to Lake Forest College where I teach, and was just so impactful for our students. And then you were the composer in residence for the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I'm curious a little bit about and you talked about 2 trains running, but your musical identity, because it does seem like you've made such an impact as a performer and such an impact as a composer. How's that play for your musical identity and what you feel like you're putting out there in the world?
Yeah, it's great. It's been a long journey of especially during those years working with Catalyst, for example, doing many residencies at Lake Forest. And actually, it was during those types of residencies when we would have opportunity to perform my works. I had Strum was an early string quartet that I wrote that we would play very frequently at residencies. And it caught the ear of faculty. And over the years, as I began to write more string music, I would get these invitations from faculty or just notices from faculty that they want to incorporate my music into their studios in various ways. And in many cases, it was because of those types of sort of traveling residencies that we would do as a performer. So I think everything has always been sort of linked together, whether I shared it all the time, whether I was transparent about how busy I was in one realm or the other at any given point. I think it was essential that I didn't sort of share that so that, because the first question is, will you have time for me?
Yeah.
Will you have time to be in, to write this piece or play in this performance? And, me constantly not wanting to feel overly influenced by others' opinions about what I should and shouldn't be doing. I kept a lot of that sort of running in tandem with one another the whole time. When people say, what do you do? I say, I'm a musician. I participate in multiple facets of music making, performing, writing, teaching, playing all kinds of styles when I can. And so it's I'm really gotten to a point where they're all sort of one. It's all part of the same, it tracks all moving in the same direction, I guess you could say. So feels like nothing is, they've all been sort of equally important as I've gone through my career.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting to have the wherewithal to understand these are parts of my musical identity, both performer, both composer, but knowing that some people might have an opinion about that you just want to keep off to the side because you want to do you and you want to not limit yourself.
Exactly.
There's some people that will be listening to this podcast that might make the transfer to. There's a lot of times in the music ed field that you're either a music educator or you're a conductor. You're not the same. And those are 2 parallel tracks that do not intersect. And I know Scott and I both share the fact that the conductors are educators and we have to be able to, give the gesture of what we want the music to sound like as informed by our score study. But we also got to talk to the people in the ensemble in front of us and know that it's not about us. It's about them. We're the only thing on that stage that's not going to make a sound.
Yep.
So I just want to thank you for that imagery there because that's very true.
Yeah. And I'll say it. I just did a residency recently at Boston University. I'm part 1 of 2 parts coming up later in April. I'll go back for my second week. And we made it really clear choice to invite students from the music ed department, the choral conducting, the symphonic conducting departments and performance and everyone all together. So there's several touch points throughout the residency where we have those sort of mixed student body attendance. So to your point, I think we all have to know the work of, even if your focus is mainly in education or mainly in one area or the other, knowing the particular struggles of each art form is really important. And people need to understand that teaching is itself an art form. You're teaching the art of communication again. Through whatever means you have in front of you.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that hurts my heart sometimes is when I see teachers teaching can be a tough profession, and especially with what they're going through day in and day out, when they have to sacrifice part of their musical identity. So it's like, I don't have time to keep playing the violin. I don't have time to keep playing the trumpet because the profession is taking everything. And I think for us to be our full musician selves, we have to embrace all of that.
Yeah, it's totally true. And also embracing the levels of participation. We also have our, as performance majors in particular, have your eye set on being, a 365-day-a-year performer. Maybe that's not what it is. If you are going to, everything is a balance. So if you take a full-time academic position, the reality is things are going to shift where you're not touring as much. And some people work it out so that they do tour. But there, other things that don't happen because they're touring 200 days a year and teaching 300 days a year. It's like there's just, at the end of the day, or, maybe, I don't know, people need to get cool with like playing in community orchestras, I think. Like bring your best to the community orchestra and like make it sound really good. I don't know. I can go on about that because and I'm such a like hardcore whatever musician that I'm like, no excuses. If you want to play, you'll figure out how to play.
Yeah.
Not to say anything bad about academic professors. I know you deal with a lot of stuff, but there's room for projects and we have to be able to balance, what your expectations are really of your work.
Yeah, I think that's really important to say. I mean, we talk about identity a ton on this podcast, the identity of the student, the identity of the guest that we have the privilege to talk to. And the people who are listening are going to have these identity sort of tug of wars in their minds. Like even as a K through 12 teacher, I know that having been one myself many years ago, the amount of actual planning you get to do versus performing versus administrative work, it truly is in balance and all is important. You do have to put in those bus forms so that you can take your students to the concert so that they could see this level of music, right? But you got to order the buses first. So, but the balance of the academic performance teaching side is you have to be here for your students, right? And a lot of what we do as musicians can't be done necessarily in the digital space as well as it can in the live space, hearing the acoustics, working on the fingerings, listening, looking at the score, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think it is worth noting that it's all a balance. It's a balance for what you want as an artist, what you want for the people who you serve as an artist to achieve. And what I appreciate about your music is that there's a lot of incredibly advanced technique that is required for many of the pieces, but there's also some pieces that developmental community groups, student musicians, and haven't made it to the professional level just yet. They can access it and they can experience it. And I think that's really important to have incredible quality music at a level that is attainable in their developmental stage. And I see that in your compositions. I think that's really important. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. It's always nice to hear when people notice that because it always feels like I want to say it's my secret mission, but it's not a secret. It's just that it's sort of baked into it's baked into the writing in that way. Like I want there to be flexibility in terms of level and approachability with the music, but also for it to have an appeal in terms of various dynamics within the music. And eventually, I'm hoping to work on graded material. That's very where I'm really intentionally looking at it in stages. But that's down the line. But it's something that's always been on my mind. So I think that's where it sort of like slips into these certain works, like the violin duos in particular.
Yeah, right. I want to maybe take it in a different direction here because we try very hard to frame who our guests are, especially since, like I said earlier, a lot of our listeners are going to be maybe band-centric people, if that's a word, and maybe haven't been introduced to your work. But I want to ask you about your work as it's related to your upbringing and your parents. Both of your parents were artists.
Mm-hmm.
And we have found that our guests have either been fully vested with two parents who were like artists, or like a guardian that was like a full blown, taking them to rehearsals with them, that kind of stuff. Or they had no prior connection to music and it was just a path that they found themselves on.
Yeah.
So could you share with us about your pathway and your upbringing?
Yeah, definitely fall in the category of I was in an artistic home where music was being played and rehearsed in the home, several times a week at least.
Yeah.
And so my mom was an actress, and so she'd be reading lines and, people making like random sounds and words out of spontaneous creativity. It was like part of my daily like experience. Yeah. And like just knowing that the pursuit of an artistic life was something that is lifelong. It's like it is an identifying factor and it can bring opportunity to you and to your family. And that was what my parents both demonstrated for me.
Yeah.
So it was very natural for me to. My parents didn't force me to play anything. They just let me pick. Actually, Third Street Music School has a preschool. So I used to go to their preschool and I was in, their little toddler program where you do clay and painting and stuff like that. And the kids would walk around with their instruments. And I just like the story that we've stuck to at this point. I was with my dad and I pointed out and I go, I want one of those. What is that? And it was just a violin. The kids carrying around their violins. I was like, I want one of those because it looked like cool. Like they looked like they had purpose or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's that? And then they signed me up for violin lessons. And that was that. I had a wonderful teacher, Alice Kanak, and she was really an expert at early childhood development and Suzuki teaching in particular. But because I think my parents were artists, I think that's where my sort of sense that everything's just going to work out just fine kind of came from, because they were not pushy. They were kind of, I think they wanted me to find my way with it. They understood that it was important for me to be natural with my process and stuff in order to build my identity, I guess.
Yeah.
I think that's what they thought. I don't know. But, and so it was like very organic, I would say. There were certain points in junior high when I wanted to quit and stuff, but that was also like junior high. So I think most kids want to quit everything in junior high.
Yeah. Junior high is, if you're not awkward at junior high, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And so I quit for a little bit and then I started back up again. And then that was that. I think about this a lot because I'm like there's different types of privilege, right, in the world. And, and I would come into these institutions like Juilliard and others where there was a lot of, money and a lot of students that had a lot of more means, really, let's say financial means. But I felt like I had the privilege of having artistic parents, and that was a privilege to know a good thing when I see it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then to have that keen sense of like, I think authenticity. I know that's a word people throw around, but being able to notice when something is real and coming from the heart, I feel like I had that privilege to know, to be able to sense that in their process, in their art. So I always felt like I could get past the difficult demands of technique because I always felt, I practiced a lot, obviously, and I have great respect for all the technique that I've learned and that continue to try to learn. But I never, I always felt I had a means to work with it and not let it take over.
Let's take a quick break.
This episode is sponsored by GIA Publications. GIA is a leading publisher of music education resources. From music play for infants to beginning band and strings methods, college-level texts to music aptitude tests, books from leading voices in music education to top-notch recordings, GIA has something for you. Visit GIAmusic.com to learn more. GIAmusic.com.
HOTM friends, we want to hear your voice. Do you have a comment, a general question, or even a question for a specific future guest? Great, because you can be a part of a future episode. Visit musicforall.org/podcasts for a list of future guests. And then all you have to do is click the Ask a Question button. We may include your voice in a future episode. Again, to record your question, just go to musicforall.org/podcasts. podcasts. Let's rejoin our conversation. Jessie, so many powerful things that you just mentioned. We're recording this right on the heels of the Winter Olympics, and we were a household just enraptured by everything. And Alyssa Liu, the figure skater, she shared the story that she quit. She didn't want to do it anymore, and that she came back with a new love, a new passion, a new almost just authentic innocence towards, and then she won a gold because there wasn't all of that pressure. We see so much anxiety in our world today around so many things, whether it be imposter syndrome or, Julia was just talking about junior high, middle school. What are some things that you see in music right now? I think we can all identify a moment in our musical past that might have been imbued with anxiety, but how do we overcome some of those social emotional challenges that might be interfering with that true musical self to come out?
That's a great question. And I'm going to say, to sort of counter what I just said, not counter, but add to it, technique does get in the way sometimes. There are just different things that happen throughout life. And there's different points when you feel really confident and free, like the figure skater, and moments when you're really self-conscious and you're really concerned. And that's because life throws different things at you at different times. And you have different levels of capacity for those things. And so I'll share a story. I recently, within the past, last season, the 24-25 season, I played a tour with Third Coast Percussion. I played the Lou Harrison Violin Concerto with them. And I hadn't played a concerto like that, a really big concerto like that, ever, or at least all the way through. In a, tour setting, especially. And anyway, it was a really demanding piece. I feel I did a serviceable job with it. I think my second movement was really nice. So I was told, and I always felt good, the second movement, but it's a very challenging, anyone who knows it, it's a very technically demanding. There's an entire page's worth of fingered octaves and stuff like that that has to happen. And the first performance of that, I had practiced a lot. And I felt pretty sure, but this other thing just came into my body of total fear and panic. And I guess I just say that, it happens to the best of us. Sometimes we feel like if we're experiencing that, it's you're the only one feeling it because it's so scary.
Yeah.
And so sometimes knowing other people feel it doesn't help, but I'm still gonna, but it does at least you can project that there is some way through it. You have to find your own way through it. For me, I had a text thread with my girlfriends. I have a girls group, and I texted all they're all musicians. They're all some of the most fabulous musicians I know. I texted them and I was like, I am backstage and I feel like a total crazy person. I'm so scared. I don't want to get on stage. I'm freaking out. I feel like a teenager. I feel like I did when I was 19 years old taking auditions or something. And they all just flooded me with you wouldn't be, positive affirmation. You wouldn't be there if you didn't know you could do it. You wouldn't have put yourself in a situation if you didn't know you could, all these nice things. And to be honest, the work at the end of the day, the work does its thing when you get on stage. The thing that you have to know is that your work, it shows when you get on stage. And if you can, there's different levels to it. I've spent some time learning about breath work and learning about how to actually realize when something's getting flared up, that I actually have techniques in order to bring myself down from that. Sometimes it's, I used to put in my scores, if you're in chamber music and you feel nervous, I used to put the word yes all over my music at different points. I would just put yes, during certain ensemble things, or soften. Words that kind of encourage relaxation and presence. And so you can give yourself those words in performance, soften or elbow in or whatever kind of technical, physical thing you might have been working on, to breathe air into that space in your body. And you can do that live, be confident that you can do that on stage. That's one thing I certainly learned from my mom being an actress. An actor has to, we, in a way, we have this block because we have a tool in front of us that we have to manipulate that is this physical, basically an inanimate object until you start playing it. And so it's a little bit of a block, whereas an actor only has themselves and then the rest of the room and the audience. And we have like the instrument, and then we have the auditory space where we're trying to hear outside of ourselves and inside ourselves at the same time and all that. But if I think of an actor, I think the like portal of communication is much more thin.
Yeah.
So I think if we can allow as instrumentalists and vocalists to have to do this so much, I mean, I would say work with talk to your vocal friends, see what techniques they have. But yeah, if you can find a way to let that flexibility of your self-talk and your body like be a moving thing in performance, like let it be a undulating, moving entity, it's like, so you're not stuck, you're not stuck in whatever anxiety you might be having. But that in itself takes a lot of work, so you have to, every time you get on stage, it is a muscle. You do get used to it. You do get used to walking out on stage and putting your instrument up under your chin and sitting down and playing. And you have to trust that. And every time you get on stage, you're giving yourself another chance to like flex the muscle. So,
yeah.
I love that. The muscle, and every time we use the muscle, it gets bigger, right? It gets stronger the next time we do it. Beautiful. Thank you.
100%. Yeah.
That is so important. I feel like a lot of times we're trying to guide our students on, don't miss this mark and make sure you take a breath together and hold that note out for as long as, it's supposed to and align the articulation. But instead for the words to talk about what they might be experiencing in their little bodies at any moment. I know I certainly do that with my conducting students when they're in their scores and they're learning how to use their body as the tool, right? And they have the musical instrument removed and they have to become the instrument. I think that's brilliant. I think the more that K through 12 teachers can show that for their students and for themselves too. I've been working with a lot of K through 12 directors that want to talk about stage fright that they get because they want it to be so good for their students and they feel this innate sense of responsibility that seems greater than if it was just for them.
Can imagine that.
I think that's really beautiful how you said it. Speaking of students and, sort of talking about how to practice these things that have worked for us and maybe in your study, I know that I have a lot of composition students, and Scott has met a lot of developing composers as well, who are very interested in your work, and a lot of their anxiety about how they're going to be seen or viewed as an artist talks about, well, can they even pursue this field as a viable field for them? Or is it just going to be the hobby? They're worried about it being the hobby. So we have a student, it's one of my former students, Franklin Hansen, who graduated with a composition degree from Rutgers. And he is working through the challenges of transitioning from, being a student in a composition studio and having that space to play and now being out on his own. So he has a question for you.
Great.
Hi, I'm Franklin, and my question is to Jessie Montgomery. How do you approach pitching ideas to prospective commissioners/collaborators?
Yeah, that's great. For the setup of that was such a nuts and bolts question. I could imagine. I was like, he was going to be like, I'm struggling with my identity as a composer, which of course is another big question to try to answer at some point. But how to approach commissioners and groups about your music? The way that commissioning model is set up, there are oftentimes organizations that sort of, I don't like, they're a gateway. They sort of gatekeep and they provide a gateway. It's a, industry sort of structure that we have in place that one should get familiar with as early as possible. Commissions can happen in lots of different ways, but there's these organizations like Chamber of Music America, New Music USA, American Composers Forum, which is more of an advisory and resources organization for composers. So there are institutions that provide funds for your own projects, right? That's like the ones I just mentioned, for example. And so getting familiar with those organizations is really important, and getting familiar with the commissioning offerings that they do provide. Oftentimes, the commissions that they offer do require that you are paired up with an ensemble and that you already have a working relationship with an ensemble. So I always say for composers, your closest way to get your music performed is by befriending performers. I mean, it seems like a simple thing to say, but The reason that I think I've had so much success with my music is because I perform my own music, and I had the luxury of being in a touring ensemble that performed, several hundred concerts a year. And so that was an advantage that I had being in a string quartet. But then also any festivals that you go to, if you're not a performing musician yourself as a composer, befriending as many performing musicians as you can at summer festivals and other places that you might go. And also, don't be afraid to write for ensembles that are of odd instrumentation, because getting your pieces heard is a little bit of a catch-22, and applying for funds is a catch-22, because you have to have the recording you have to have the piece and the recording to apply for the application in order to get the funds to create more work, right? So just know that much of what you're going to do at first is your own grassroots effort. You might have a small grant, or, hopefully maybe you could get a couple $1,000s together through school or other means of support. And you can put together a recording session and several rehearsals of something and make a nice recording with that amount of money.
Yeah.
You could put on a whole show for that amount of money, probably,
right.
Depending on the context where you live and all these kind of things. And if you have good friends that are willing to support you. So a lot of it is making sure you're building your own community early on of musicians and other composers as well. Composer collectives often start out of school. Those are the people you spend most of your time with. So you might as well start a group together. And I think composers also starting to think of them, because I am part of a group called Blacknificent Seven, we call ourselves. And it's a composer collective that we started a few years back. And it's been a really great resource. And it's happening for us in a very different time in our careers. But I remember when I was in college doing my master's, there was a group called Circles and Lines that came out at NYU, and they did a bunch of commissioning.
Yeah.
In fact, that was one of the first new music concerts I played as a professional in playing in public quartet, was the Circles and Lines gig in Brooklyn, So I don't know. I think the main thing is getting used to cultivating your own work outside of the commissioning world at first, because you'll need to prove it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I think, again, they start to build off of each other over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, get familiar with what grants and financial support offerings there are out there for young composers.
I think it's really important what you talked about in terms of building the community of support, and for a composer to have it not just be the MIDI track, right?
Yeah.
To be able to do that.
100%.
It's the same that I have advised my conducting friends. Well, how do you get, asked to do region? Well, you go to the music educator conventions, you give a presentation on something that you think you can give to the field that you feel good about and that you could help with. And then I remember being assigned to conduct a community group in grad school as part of my assistantship. And I made sure that the year prior to that assignment, I went and I played in that community group.
Yeah.
So that when I was in front of them, there was a better connection.
Exactly.
It just makes the communication easier when it's somebody that you know and trust as one of your own, either up there on the podium or behind the art itself.
Yep.
So I think that's really important. Just finding community in our field. I wanted to end with a question, and this is a personal, selfish question of mine, because I'm just very interested in
Sure.
One of your works that's getting performed a ton right now is Banner, because of the 250th of America. And it's an incredible piece of music. And I wanted to just hear a little bit about, the process of writing that. And because you do talk a little, or I feel like I have experienced a lot of social commentary and stuff talking about our times, but through your music within your work. So I just wanted to ask, what was your, inspiration for it, motivation, and how did it start and end the way you thought it would be?
Yeah. So Banner is interesting because I wrote it actually, interestingly, in protest of the original idea for the piece, in a way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the commission was proposed as a commemoration of the 200th anniversary of the Star-Spangled Banner.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the word commemoration was used or celebration was used. I think it might have been celebration, and which would have prompted my
protest.
Yeah. And so, and even commemoration would have had me questioning, getting sort of like, well, how do I get really thoughtful about this? Because I knew that for Black Americans in particular, that song it's always been, people have protested the anthem for decades, by the way, every time something happens in a new generation. Oh, and I see it happening more and more. It looks like it's never happened before. It seems like it's the first time somebody's ever gone against, so to speak, the nationalist trend. But I felt the need to challenge the sentiments within the song and what they represented for different people. And so once I realized, then music is great because music has so many open doors. There's so many ways you can interpret and sort of layer and make suggestions, that just leave the point really open for interpretation. But the very, very kind of obvious pairing for me was the Star Spangled Banner and Lift Every Voice and Sing in relationship to each other within the music. And I guess that's what I mean. You put them in relationship to each other in a musical context, and it leaves the listener open to say, which of these songs is giving the most weight? Where do I feel this in my body? I'm getting transported into these ideas of, where these songs intersect. And maybe I'm not answering these questions for myself right now, but they're intersecting in this moment. And I'm curious now. That's where we hope that music, it just sparks that curiosity. It doesn't maybe answer any questions, but it keeps you open to new possibilities. And I get that in the way that people receive this piece, Banner. And it allowed me to explore other anthems and to explore the concept of what an anthem or a nationalistic point of view really means. And now we're struggling with what they really mean. It creates this sense of border, me against you. I'm holding on to everything that I can in order to protect myself against something else. And I just think that that's a dangerous place we've found ourselves in. And so putting them into, a piece of music where they're all sort of bashing against each other. There are no borders between the sounds. You just watch them mix and create something spectacular or some, it creates a feeling. So, in broad strokes, that's kind of the point of this piece in the end, was to demonstrate that in some physical form, we can all kind of live together and collide together and come out with, if not an agreement, but some kind of opening into something else.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to live with this piece over time.
Yes.
That was 12 years ago that I wrote that piece. So it's become more meaningful over time.
Yeah. I was reading the list of upcoming performances for that piece in particular. And if you look at, there's also a lot of pieces that are being programmed right now. New World Symphony is being programmed a ton. Darius Mio, The Creation of the World people are using art as a vehicle to address these oftentimes conflicting feelings within themselves. And how privileged are we to be able to have something like music to address these complicated feelings. But I do think that you do it so beautifully in your work.
Thank you.
And I love that you have allowed the music to sort of be this, here's all the colors, here's the canvas, it's all on there, and there are no instructions of how you're supposed to feel, but just feel.
Yeah.
Just make sure you feel.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. Like I said, this podcast is truly, we're trying to highlight the stories behind the sounds.
Yeah.
And I think getting to learn a little bit more about you is going to be empowering to musicians of all ages and developments, but especially for our composers that are listening.
Yeah.
This is going to be a big treat for them. I know Franklin is going to lose his mind
when he hears
good. His voice next to your voice.
Aw, that's great.
He truly is trying very hard to keep his work and his progress and how he is working on his artistry at the forefront,
Mm-hmm.
but also understanding that it's a business and it's an industry.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to protect both things and have the understanding that
Mm-hmm.
that's what you got to do.
And it's also lifelong. I
Mhm.
think that's the point. It's hard to see when you're young what your life looks like. So
Yeah.
just know that it keeps going.
Yes, there's no crystal balls.
Yeah.
So Jessie, what are some projects that you're really excited about? What are some premieres that are up and coming, just so that we could keep an eye out for your fantastic up and coming work?
The biggest piece that's circulating this year is called These Righteous Paths. And it's a cello concerto that I wrote for the wonderful cellist, musician, composer, vocalist extraordinaire, Abel Selokoe.
Wow.
He is a wonderful, wonderful person, wonderful cellist. It's been a real treat working with him on this piece. It's a piece that's based in 3 parts on 3 separate poems that my mom wrote,
Mm-hmm.
each of them describing her family experiences she had traveling down to Georgia on the train with her sister when she was young, memories of ancestors and friends and family who had passed on, and a hope for the future, a song that she wrote, a poem that I wrote that I turned into a song called I Want a New Song. And those 3 poems are the inspiration behind each movement.
Wow.
And so Abel was a perfect conduit for telling these stories and sharing this music, as he uses voice to sing the words and also add his own sort of unexpected elements through vocalization and mouth percussion and various improvisation that he'll add to the work. That again speaks to this big question we were asking about keeping things open, keeping the path open. So that's where These Righteous Paths kind of plays into that idea of the path that we're all on to continue down.
Well, and what a beautiful intersection from his fantastic work and like almost like unworldly talents to be able to use his body instrument as well as
I know.
we called it an inanimate object until we have life come into it, the cello, but also with your mother's work.
Yeah.
I know the word path is in the title, but this is like an intersection
It
of
is.
all those paths. Yeah. I'm so excited to hear it.
Thank you. Yeah, me too.
When is the premiere?
The premiere is March 20th with the DSO Berlin, Deutsche Symphonie Orchestra Berlin. And it will come to the States in July 2026.
Fantastic. We'll definitely have to keep an eye out for that.
And this spring, 2026, April 13th at BSO Symphony Hall, the Boston University Concert Band is going to play a new arrangement of a piece of mine called Coincident Dances, which is originally written for full orchestra, led by Joshua Roach. So any wind band folks out there who want to check out new repertoire, it'll be my first time hearing it. I will be there. So
fantastic. And yeah, a lot of our audience member, like I said earlier, are band-centric. So yeah, I'm excited to check it out just to see how your music translates into our instrumentation. Very cool. Congratulations on all this.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank our episode sponsor, GIA Publications, for allowing this beautiful talk with Grammy Award-winning composer and just like cool human being. Like, sorry, like it's just, we could talk for hours. Jessie Montgomery, thank you so, so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Julia. It's been a real pleasure.
I'm Julia Baumanis.
And I'm Scott Edgar.
And this has been The Heart of Teaching Music.